Hello, my name is Kaelie Lund. I'm a Victim Assistance Specialist with the Jacob Waterling Resource Center in St. Paul, Minnesota. And today I'm going to be talking with you about how to support a friend who's experienced sexual violence. A quick note here is that the content that I'm talking about today is mostly aimed at high school student level and above. So if you're watching with middle school, elementary school kiddos, just know that this content is going to be more appropriate for somebody at a high school age level. So the Jacob Waterling Resource Center is founded in 1990 to educate and assist families and communities to address and prevent the exploitation of children. We work to end all forms of child maltreatment through education, training, prevention, and all while advocating for and serving children, adult survivors, and communities. This is Jacob Waterling, and he was an 11-year-old who was biking near his home in 1989 when he was kidnapped. And his family founded the JWRC in ways to both, help eliminate child abuse, like I said, but also as a way to act as a resource for families of missing people. Jacob's story was found out in 2016 when they found that a stranger who had abducted him, had killed him. But instead of focusing on this end part of Jacob's life, we focus on what made Jacob the person he was. And some of those are these traits we have listed here, which we call the 11 traits for Jacob. And these really guide the type of education and trainings we do when we're working with kids. So just some content warnings here. You've probably figured out from the title that we're going to be talking about some sensitive materials, but I kind of like to give a little map of where we're going in the next however much time we spend together today. But I'm going to be talking about definitions of sexual violence. What is sexual violence? How to offer support if a friend does disclose sexual violence to you. Options for what might happen after they talk with you. Some boundaries that you and your friend can set to ensure, mental health and also safety planning to ensure safety. And we'll also be ending by talking about self-care for both your friend and for yourself as the person that is hearing your experience. With that, let's talk about self-care. This webinar is recorded. It is here for you to pause and take breaks and come back to. I would much rather you, take as many breaks as you need to versus just like sloughing through the entire thing if it's bringing up some feelings for you. So just, be mindful of your body, be gentle with yourself. This content is here for whenever you're ready. So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is just a definition of sexual violence. And off to the left here, you see the different kind of, sexual violence is an umbrella term for lots of different things, but you can kind of see what some of those are listed here. I think many of us think about sexual assault and rape, sexual abuse. We might not necessarily think of things like, being shown, sexual imagery or exposure to pornography or indecent exposure or even cyber harassment. So, I love graphics. You'll see that throughout, and I think this is a helpful one to start framing where we're talking about today. So sexual violence is an umbrella term for any unwanted sexual contact or exposure, including words or actions that go against a person's will or without their consent. Sexual violence can happen to anybody regardless of age, gender, race, sexual orientation, religion, any identity piece there. And similarly, people who commit sexual violence can also come from all of the different backgrounds and identities. Most often, commonly are acquaintances, family members, partners, but can sometimes be strangers as well. So we're moving on to the next portion of a presentation where we're going to be talking about, how we can offer support to friends, what our role is as a friend, and how we can also enforce some of those boundaries. When you feel like, oh, I want to be a friend here, but I feel like I'm not sure what to do. Which I think when I talk with high schoolers, they want to be there for their friends. They want to, make sure they're getting the best care possible, but they don't always realize that by, being the only person they're telling, that's not necessarily giving them the best care possible. So we'll talk about that. So first, I just want to talk about how to respond if a friend shares that they've experienced sexual violence, because you might not know what to say, and that's okay. What I have prepared for you in the next few slides are, phrases that you can keep in your toolkit, your advocacy toolkit, and take them out when you need. So You might be concerned about their health and safety, you might be wondering who it was, you might be wondering any number of things. But I want you to know that your role is to be their friend right now. It's not to ask, questions about what happened or why questions. The best thing you can do for your friend right now who's told you this is just say, I believe you. No questions asked, period. I believe you. This took a lot of courage to share. Thank you for trusting me with this. By validating your friends, who just acknowledging that they chose to share this thing with you, that's really hard. And, you want them to know that you're here for them. This is not your fault. I'm sorry this happened to you, because it's never, ever, ever, insert 10 more evers. It's never someone's fault for being sexually assaulted. Survivors might, blame themselves, especially if they know the perpetrator, but it's your role as their friend to remind them that it isn't their fault and it shouldn't have happened to them. And again, you can remind them that, you're going to be there for them today, you're going to be there for them tomorrow. Remind this person that you're not going anywhere. Maybe you have a vacation, but that's not truly going. You're going to be there to support them today and in the future. You, again, might have lots of thoughts racing through your mind, and while you might want to, have them tell you all of the details, you also need to let your friend share at their own pace. Some things you can say is, I'm here to listen if you want to talk. I'm also here to sit with you if you don't want to talk. I think knowing that they don't have to tell you everything right now can be a helpful tool for your friend who's just experienced this. If you decide you want to talk more later, you can always call me, you can text me, we can FaceTime, I can send you memes, whatever you can offer them as a way to get in contact, because if they're not ready to talk today, they might be ready to talk in a week or in a month or tomorrow, and they'll know that you're there for them. Another thing you can say is, I can understand that it might be hard to tell this to a friend or to somebody that you know, but have you thought about talking to somebody on a sexual violence hotline? One of the things that we encourage people to do to just be aware of resources is locate your local sexual violence shelter and hotline. A quick Google search will just tell you whichever ones are close to you or in, nearby towns. These are people who go through hours and hours and hours of training to be able to support survivors and victims over the phone, even in person at the hospital, whatever they need to be able to make sure that those people are safe. So just know that you don't have to go through this alone. If your friend wants to talk to somebody, maybe they don't have to sit face to face with and can still talk with somebody who knows what they're talking about. Those hotlines can be a great resource. Another resource is RAIN, which stands for the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. They have a great website full of resources from everything for survivors and victims, people supporting survivors and victims, even, information for perpetrators and how to get help as well. It's a whole, slew of important things in there. And then this last thing, the crisis text line. By texting 741-741, you can get connected to a crisis counselor over your phone. It's over text. You don't have to call them. I know that talking on the phone can be the bane of some people's existence. I get it. And these people, whether you're experiencing suicidal ideation, whether you're just feeling super depressed, whether you're feeling, hopeless, these people are here to talk with you in a low-key way and get you important information in ways that feel, safe and comfortable and don't require too much energy. So I think that knowing you have places you can go and talk to people, websites you can look at, and also people you can text is a really nice, array of resources and choices. Because I think something that a lot of survivors don't feel that they have is choice, and knowing and being able to provide to your friend, look, I found these different things that we can, that people you can talk to or places we could go, could help instill in them that they do have that choice and that power again. Something else I want to share is that your role is to be this person's friend. It's not to be their doctor or another healthcare practitioner or a therapist. Your role is to be their friend. I think some things I hear from high school students is that I just they don't want me to tell anyone else, and I just feel really overwhelmed because I don't know what to do with this information. So something you can say if you're starting to feel that way is, I want to make sure you're getting the best care possible. Have you thought about going to a doctor? I want to make sure that you're healthy and safe. Have you thought about talking to a therapist? I want to make sure you're talking to somebody who is trained to provide care for survivors. Um, as a teenager, as a young adult, your job is to grow and be a pal. And sometimes, it can be really hard to be a friend to somebody if you're feeling like you're going through this alone. They're the only person, or you're the only person that they're telling. You don't want to be the only person that holds on to this information. So I think it's really important by saying to your friend, I want to make sure you're getting the best care possible, and I cannot provide all of that best care for you. It gives an out and a way to just talk about other options that they could talk with other people about. This is really helpful, I think, when you want to be there for somebody, but you also are recognizing that you're kind of at the end of your own rope there. So it can be helpful to keep that in your back pocket as well. When somebody shares something really intense like this with you, it's maybe the worst thing that you could do to just never talk with them about it again. You might feel like, oh, I don't want to bring it back up. I don't want to hurt their feelings, or maybe they're having a good day. I don't want to ruin it for them. But it's worse if you never bring it up. It's worse if you never check back in. It's worse if you pretend that conversation never happened. So please check in with your friend. If you talk with them during the week, on the weekend, send them a text and just say, hey, I'm thinking about our conversation this week, sending you extra strong vibes, or, sending you love, or sending you this really hilarious picture I found on the internet or video or whatever. Just like checking in with them. It doesn't have to be an intense conversation in itself. It can just be something kind of gentle and light, but letting them know that you're thinking of them. Similarly, if you are the type of person that kind of wants to have a conversation with them about what kind of support they'd like from you, that's awesome. It can be kind of a tricky topic to broach, but if they're your best friend and they're acting totally different than how they're normally acting, just check in and say like, hey, I see like that there's been a really big change in your behavior. What kind of support do you want from me? Do you want me to be an accountability buddy and make sure that you call your therapist? Do you want me to be somebody that can have my phone on all night in case you need to get a hold of me? Do you want me to reach out to you because you're finding it hard to reach out to people? You can provide some of those options, but they also, might not know what they need or might not have an answer, but they'll remember that you asked them that question, and maybe when they do know what they need, they'll reach back out to you. An easy way to just provide ongoing support, and this is like a Kaelie classic, is I'll just set a reminder on my phone or calendar to connect with them each week. If I have a friend who's had a family member pass away, I'll set a reminder on my phone, and every week at that time, I'll just send them a little note. If I have, a friend who I've had a hard conversation with, and I want to make sure that, because I'm working, I'm living in the Corona era and everything's kind of up in the air, but I don't want to forget about that conversation in this person. I'll set a timer on my phone or something like that to just make sure I'm reaching back out to them and I don't forget. If you have a great memory and it's not going to be hard for you to forget, amazing. But for those of us who don't have that, I find this as a really good tool. So that was kind of about how to have the conversations with your friend, kind of what to provide in that moment when they're first sharing with you. Moving forward, we're going to be talking about some options that could happen after they talk with you about what happened, maybe just share with you that it happened, how to set some boundaries, and also safety planning if they need to be thinking about, their immediate safety. So when thinking about options, one of the first things that comes to mind is, making sure someone is physically healthy. An example of something that could happen with that is a SANE exam. So a SANE exam, SANE stands for Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner. And as somebody that they've told this information to, you could kind of bring up the idea of them going to get a SANE exam. So they're done by these healthcare professionals, nurses who are trained to work with survivors or victims of sexual violence, and are a way to both ensure physical health, like physically make sure that you're doing okay. They can protect against STIs and prevent pregnancy. And they also collect evidence if your friend decides that later they might want to report or pursue legal action in the future. Something to note about SANE exams is it's typically a best practice to get an SANE exam done within 5 days of whatever assault occurred for DNA evidence preservation, but they can be done later, right? You can still go to the doctor later and talk about this with them. And the nice thing about getting a SANE exam is you don't have to make a decision right off the bat about what you want to do with that, with the kit that they have of that evidence, or You don't have to make a decision if you want to report, if you want to do something with that. You can just say, oh my gosh, that's so super overwhelming. I can't even think about that right now. All I thought about was going to the doctor. So I kind of skipped down to that second bullet point, but you're allowed to bring a support person with you. Otherwise, a local sexual violence shelter can provide you with an advocate during that appointment so your friend doesn't have to go alone. And like I said, going into this slide, after the exam is completed, the evidence is held until a certain date. Typically, the Department of Justice recommends to the end of the statute of limitations. Can be up to 50 years in some states. So you don't have to decide yet. Your friend doesn't have to decide if you want to report to the police, if you want to pursue legal action. All you might have to think about that day is just getting the SANE exam, and that is honestly enough to have on your plate for a day. And also, getting a SANE exam is not required to report to the police, but if you do decide later to report to the police, it can be a helpful step to just ensure that you have that evidentiary kit, that you had the SANE exam done. But ultimately, focusing on your friend's health and safety as a good lens versus if you want to pursue legal action, right? Like that can feel really intense, or maybe your friend knows that they want to do that. But regardless, I think it is important to just try to get your friend to the doctor to make sure that they're physically in okay shape. And I mentioned that 5-day mark with the SANE exams, which I think can be a real hindrance for some people because they think, oh, well, it happened last week and I'm just not going to go to the doctor because it already passed. And you know what? It's never too late to go to a doctor to ensure that you're safe and healthy. It's never too late. You can, if you want to still do a SANE exam, you can try to make that happen. You can just have a regular doctor's appointment, or even, for younger people, they can call it a child wellness exam. If somebody discloses abuse that maybe happened a while ago, but they just want to have a doctor come in and check and make sure that that person is safe and healthy. So these doctor's appointments can happen anytime after experiencing sexual violence. You always have the option to talk with a healthcare professional you trust. And I think a lot of people, including myself, got our sex ed from the internet and from, people in the back of the bus. And, that is not super reliable. So by talking with somebody in the healthcare industry that you trust, you can get these reliable answers about your body and safety and sexual health that maybe you didn't get growing up. I also want to talk about boundaries. This infographic always cracks me up. The first part I think about, okay, this example, maybe will be a nice break because it has nothing to do with sexual violence, but I always want to make tacos for dinner. Like if I could make tacos for dinner 7 days a week, I would be the happiest person in the world. My partner does not feel the same way. So we have to think about okay, what do they want? What do I want? Let's compromise. And we can have these healthy boundaries that maybe only, 1 to 5 days a week we'll have tacos. Unhealthy boundaries would be, if I wanted to have tacos 7 days a week, but my partner didn't, but I did it anyway, that's an unhealthy boundary, right? I guess maybe it's silly that I'm talking about dinner, but I'm a little hungry, so we're just going to roll with it. But I think this also can be when thinking about healthy or unhealthy relationships. Like if you feel like both of, whoever's in that relationship, if those folks are, feeling like they have mutual trust and respect and their boundaries are being honored, but maybe in an unhealthy relationship, somebody's boundary is not being honored over and over again, and that person just kind of is realizing that now, oh, I actually am not being respected or trusted in this way. So anyway, I already said I love infographics, and that stands. Going back to the topic, about finding and enforcing boundaries for yourself. So you as the friend that's acting as a support person, let's be real. We know that there are high statistics for young folks of people who have experienced sexual violence. So while you might want to support your friend, you might find that you're not in a headspace to do so right now. You might find that it's bringing up triggers for you. You might find that it's giving you flashbacks to maybe an experience that you had. And you know what? It is okay to not be okay to talk about this with your friend. As soon as you can, let them know that while you love them and want to support them, you might need to help them find someone else right now with whom they can talk more in depthly about this experience. That could be a trusted adult, it could be another friend, it could be a counselor, it could be a teacher, it might be their parent, whatever the situation is. Help them brainstorm other people they could talk to and say, I love you. This has nothing to do with you, but it's bringing up some stuff with me that I want to honor as well. I want to be able to take care of you in the best way I can, and right now I can't do that because I'm feeling triggered. However, let's brainstorm together some people you could talk to, and from that list, you can find out who you could talk to. That's a hard conversation to have, but knowing that that's an option, you're not trapped into a conversation that you're not feeling ready to have. That could be a boundary that you find is really helpful for you that day or for that time that your friend is going through this, and know that it doesn't mean you love them any less. It also just means you want to honor what you're capable of in that moment. However, if you do choose to provide that support, just be really mindful of your body. In fact, now, take a moment to just kind of stretch out, take a big belly breath, stretch your limbs out over your head, down below. These conversations take a lot out of us, and for good reason. Our brain switches into that fight, flight, or freeze response because we're, hearing information that makes us scared for people we love. So try to go and regulate your nervous system after this. Maybe take a walk, exercise, do whatever you need to feel good and safe and relieve some body stress. I think that it's really important that you're taking care of yourself and your body, even if your friend is the one that has experienced the harm. Because again, you can't provide your best support if you're not at your best. And now this slide is about, boundaries for your friend versus for you, the friend, supporting them. So, I think I talked about how your power kind of gets stripped away once you've experienced sexual violence, or it can feel like that. You may feel like you don't have, power or choices, but remind your friend that they get to make decisions about what comes next, right? If they decide that they want to report or not report, if they want to tell people or not tell people, making sure that they know that they have autonomy and they do get to make choices. And if they do decide to report, it might involve talking about their story over and over and over again, and giving them a heads up that you might have to talk to, a school official, and then you might have to talk to the police, and then you might have to talk to an interviewer, right? Like there's different levels of people that they might have to talk to. So if you know this in advance, you can just say, I'm here for you if you want to report, and I just want to share that it might mean talking through this a bunch of times. So let's make a list right now of just 5 to 10 things that you can do to practice self-care during those conversations. What about drawing while you're doing it? What about having a fidget, or having essential oils that you can take out and sniff to kind of have a break during that conversation? I think, what about a sweatshirt that you can have so you feel cozy, or if you have anything like that, kind of something that's going to provide you sensory comfort, and also strategize with them about longer term, what are some things that they could do that could help them feel safe and healthy and relieve some of that body stress as well. Something else I want to talk about are secrets, because if a friend discloses to you that they've experienced sexual violence, it might feel like you owe it to them to keep this a secret. This is one of those moments where if I was in a classroom full of people, I would ask people to raise their hand if they'd consider having to keep this a secret. And I think most people would want to keep this a secret for their friend. However, there's something I want you to think about, which is there are some instances when keeping things a secret may cause more harm to the person that told you this, to your friend. And sometimes the people closest to us disclose to us or tell us that they experience sexual violence because they're actually seeking help beyond what you can give them. It might be, testing the waters to see how you respond, which may be, if you respond by saying, I believe you, I want to, support you, what do you need? They'll say oh, okay, that was a good experience, or as good as it could have been. I actually want help because I'm not doing well, or I want help because I'm not feeling well and I want to go to the doctor. Oh, I have another slide. It might be later on, but things to think about are, if you are feeling actually, I'm just going to wait because it's coming up for safety planning. So this is the slide I wanted to talk about. So consider the following questions that if your friend tells you something that you think is a secret, or you should keep a secret, is the harm that's being caused by someone they live with, like a parent, caregiver, guardian? Is the harm being caused by someone in a position of power, like a teacher, a school administrator, a coach, a pastor, someone who is in a higher up position over your friend, kind of in that hierarchy of power, someone that has, perhaps influence over them or power over them? And then another question, which is your friend in immediate danger, either from themselves or others? Is your friend telling you that they're afraid to go home because they're afraid their stepdad might hurt them? Is your friend afraid to get off the phone with you because they're afraid they might hurt themselves, right? Sometimes the best thing you can do for your friend is to tell an adult you trust and get them that help that they might need that you can't give them. And if that, scares the living daylights out of you, it's okay. Take a deep breath and know that you can, use the situation as a quote hypothetical situation to see what sort of advice an adult gives. So you could say, hey mom, I need to run a hypothetical situation past you. Hypothetically, if I had a friend who told me that they were sexually abused by their dad, what should I do? Because I don't know what to do here. And your parent is probably a pretty smart person and would recognize this is probably not a hypothetical situation, but could talk with you and say, oh, well, that's actually, that's a really big deal. We want to make sure that they're in a safe living situation, that they're not living with that person doesn't have access to them to do that harm. Here are some things that we can do together to make sure that this hypothetical friend gets the care that they need. Because you should never be afraid that your friend might experience that harm again. And so when you're in doubt, reach out for assistance from whether that's a trusted adult in your life or, a local sexual violence shelter you can call and ask that hypothetical situation to as well, and just see what sort of advice that they have. All right, I'm going back. Sorry, those got out of order, but safety planning. If that harm was caused by someone your friend knows, it's possible that they might see that person again, right? If it's an acquaintance, if it's a friend, if it's a partner. So whenever your friend is ready to think about the future, offer to go through some what-if scenarios so they know that they have choice, power, and can feel safe in those interactions. Sometimes the what-if scenarios might always be, I turn around and walk the other way because I don't want to ever talk to that person again. That is a totally valid thing to do. A what if scenario could also be, what if I'm in a class with them? You could go into your high school counselor and ask to switch to another class of that same class, just in a different hour. What if their locker is close to mine? Try to switch lockers with your friend, or if you have to get permission, talk to your counselor to help advocate for you to get your locker changed. That sort of thing. If the harm was perpetrated by somebody they live with, talk with them about alternative places they could stay. And this is, again, that situation where you're going to want to bring in someone else you trust to kind of strategize with you, because you might not think of something that might be totally obvious to an adult. So, as much as you might want to offer that they can stay with you or maybe another friend, let them know they don't have to go back to that person who did this to them, but you might need to ask for help to help them find another safe situation. And lastly, I just want to talk about self-care, and also I'll give a shout out to Frizz Kid Art, who did almost all of these different photos that I have in this presentation, just some really lovely art. I want to talk about self-care. For your friend, I talked about this a little bit already, but strategize with them about activities they can do to feel safe and healthy. For some people that might be exercising, journaling, creating art. Those are things that can really help them process things in their body and also help them feel distracted while they do that processing. Some people might just, want to lay and watch Netflix, and that's okay. That kind of self-numbing, self-soothing is going to help for a little bit, but at some point they're going to need to find something that feels more like self-care and less like self-soothing. And self-care is that hard stuff that you don't necessarily want to do, but is good for you, like putting together a budget, calling a therapist, canceling Amazon Prime, whatever you need to do. But, distractions are okay, but you also want to get them to the place where you can feel like they can help with that care as well. They don't have to go through the future alone. I really like the analogy that even the best doctors still ask other doctors for consultations with their cases because they need help. They need to reach out to other people because they don't know everything. And I take comfort in that a doctor isn't trying to just go about it by themselves, right? They're going to ask for help and other people's opinions. And just like that, you don't have to go through this by yourself. Your friend doesn't have to go through this by themselves. Brainstorm support people that they can reach out to and kind of enlist as part of their support network. So people like therapists, doctors, teachers, parents, pastors, high school counselors, maybe like a troop leader, Other, people like friends are great, but at some point you're going to want to have like trusted adults in your safety net, your support net too, because you want to make sure that if one person doesn't know the answer, you can turn to all those other people and make sure you get the answer you need. Some more self-care, allowing them to process emotions in safe and healthy ways. If you find that your friend is kind of using drugs and alcohol to self-medicate, try to, encourage them to not do that, which is a really hard conversation to have with your friend too, but saying something like, hey, I'm really concerned about the ways that you're kind of self-medicating right now. I would love for us to maybe get coffee and talk about other outlets that you could have for processing, some of the stuff that you're going through. Um, yeah, it's tough. It's tough if you see your friend making choices that you don't agree with. And it's also tough to try to, tell them that you care about them enough to have a hard conversation with them about that. So, strategizing with them and, even saying like, I know that you used to love to play softball. Like, would you want to get some folks together? We could, throw together a softball game. Or maybe like, oh, let's play Smash Brothers. Like, that's something that we used to do together a lot. Like, I'd love to come over and we can do that sort of thing. Um, Also, letting your friends embrace the tears, the anger, the frustration, the numbness, other emotions that might come up, and just, above it all, remind them that it was not their fault. Any sort of emotion that comes from this, you can be somebody they can process with, and, encouraging them to process with a counselor as well. But just, remind them that none of this was their fault and that, their emotions are valid. There can be, there's, a good amount of research that shows that people can go through anxiety, depression, even suicidal thoughts after experiencing a sexual assault or violence. So if you're afraid that your friend might be in danger of hurting themselves, trust your gut and utilize your resources, right? Because you know that person, and trust your gut. If they're saying something that makes you feel really nervous or is unlike them, or they're acting in kind of reckless ways, or they're telling you life isn't worth living anymore, trust your gut that that's not normally something that they would say. And if you really feel like something might be happening to them right now, or they might be doing something right now, call the police if you think that harm is about to happen. Otherwise, you can encourage them to reach out to that crisis counselor, 741-741, and just text with somebody until some of those feelings kind of subside. And even offer to sit with them while they do so. And this last part was probably really profound, but there's any number of other things you can do. You can, if you're afraid that a friend is about to hurt themselves, it is not your responsibility anymore to protect that secret. It is your responsibility as their friend to make sure that you reach out to somebody else and let them know. So it might be telling a parent, it might be calling the police, it might be calling a counselor, people in your support network that you trust. And self-care for you, because you're acting as the support person. You also might need support as well. Reaching out to a trusted friend, a partner, a therapist to debrief and process your own emotions. This can bring up stuff like we talked about. Bears repeating twice, be mindful of your triggers. You're a whole person with your own whole experiences. So talking with a friend might bring up some of that for you. So just remember that be gentle with yourself. Your feelings are valid too, just like you're telling your friend that their feelings are valid. And go to some of those trusted activities to get out some of your stress. I put yelling into your pillow because, whatever it is, find an activity that feels safe and healthy for you to get out some of that body stress, and also something that feels comforting to you. Yeah. If you are at a loss, go back to what used to make you really, really happy as a little kid, whether that was like theater or dance or, drawing, making art, playing sports, if you're having a tough time of thinking about what you can do right now, go back to some of those activities you used to love. And that's the presentation. Just a reminder here, again, for Kid Art, healing is not linear. You're gonna, your friend might experience a lot of really positive growth and something might send them back. And just like for you, supporting your friend is hard too, and your healing from that is not linear. Be gentle with yourself, be kind to yourself, and recognize when you're not the right person to be able to give the best care to the people you love. I really appreciate you watching this. I care a lot about what I do, and I'm really lucky to work for this organization. So if you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. My email address is below. It would be my A total honor to talk with you about any questions you have, or to do this presentation at a school or with an organization. We can do them over Zoom, we can do them in person. But I would love to talk with you more, so just let me know. Take care, go do something to get some of that body stress out right now, and thank you again for watching.